tomorrow, we will be issuing document requests to over 60 different people and individuals from the White House to the Department of Justice, Donald Trump Jr., Alan Weisselberg, to begin the investigations, to present the case to American people about obstruction of justice, corruption, and abuse of power.
So that would include John Kelly, the former chief of staff, Don McGahn, the former White House counsel?
I would imagine. I mean, I don't have the list in front of me, but we will be releasing the list tomorrow of over 60 entities, people.
Nice of George Stephanopoulos to throw some extra names in there. You got House Judiciary Committee Chairman Jerry Nadler making that announcement. Today begins yet another investigation into the President of the United States. For more on this, we go to Joe DiGenova, legal analyst and former U.S. Attorney to the District of Columbia. Joe, good morning. What do you make of Jerry Nadler's announcement yesterday?
Nothing surprising, neither the subject matter nor the number of subpoenas. This will be an abusive investigation designed to delegitimize the President of the United States. Mr. Nadler and his fellow Democrats have never accepted the result of the 2016 election, and they're not about to do so. They run a very serious risk, however. Given the blunderbuss nature of their subpoenas and the clearly political nature of their investigation, it may very well be that many people will resist these subpoenas, invoke privileges, and litigate the matter, and they may very well, and that is the Democrats in the House, create bad law on the power to subpoena individuals. These investigations are skirting an area of the law that the Supreme Court has ruled that if investigations become abusive, they can be stopped. Now, there is a presumption that what Congress does is justified, but that presumption can be overcome by the facts and circumstances of an individual situation. The Nadler better be careful, but I think they're not. I think they're drunk with power, the Democrats are, and I think they're going to push it too far. The American people do not want this.
Joe, can the Attorney General William Barr step in here at all and say you can't just investigate someone for the sake of investigating them?
No. This is Congress's right to investigate things. The question is, here's what the Attorney General can do. He will be representing the executive branch and the President in subpoenas. That's the job of the Justice Department, along with White House counsel. They can refuse to produce documents on the basis of privilege, executive privilege, confidential communication privilege with the President, Fifth Amendment. I mean, there's nothing wrong with invoking all the privileges that are available. And if I had a client in this, I would advise him to take the Fifth. I wouldn't turn over anything to this committee.
Now, let me, one thing, just as a layman here, it kind of looks like this is an issue that's already been picked over. There's a dramatic amount of redundancy involved in opening like 60 document requests and subpoenas, all of this related to, quote, obstruction of justice. If Bob Mueller's actually already taken a run at this, and then we're going to get a report this week, first of all, it seems like they're preparing for a lackluster report as far as the Democrats are concerned. And secondly, is there in any way a reasonable assessment of this is double jeopardy? This is an attempt to try the very same facts over and over and over again as a form of harassment.
Well, it's political double jeopardy, no doubt about that. This is old news, but it's not legal double jeopardy. Double jeopardy requires an acquittal, and then you can't be retried again. This is, however, political double jeopardy. And again, the risks here are political for the Democrats. They're not legal. They have the power. They can issue subpoenas.
Sure.
They can also abuse that power. And they apparently are headed toward that result, abusing that power. And I think people are going to respect the invocation of privileges of people who refuse to turn over documents or refuse to testify.
Well, it's abundantly clear that not only are they rejecting the results of the last election, they're salting the earth ahead of the next one. I mean, this is, on its face, a transparent effort to hurt the president ahead of 2020.
No doubt about that. This is designed to wound him for the upcoming election and delegitimize him while he governs. There's no better example of what they're trying to do than holding the hearing with Michael Cohen while the president was negotiating overseas in Vietnam on the North Korea denuclearization issue. That performance by the House while the president was overseas was un-American, unwise, and very, very dangerous to the conduct of U.S. foreign policy. But you know what? if you're a Democrat, you're allowed to do whatever you want, and the media just says that's just fine.
Now, Joe, and I may be asking a redundant question here, but they can go back as far as they want. They can go back, 15 years before the president, when the president was still a Democrat,
Sure.
and investigate anything they want.
They can issue subpoenas for everything. But that doesn't mean, A, that the records exist, or B, that people are not going to resist them. The power of the Congress to investigate is vast, and it is very, very powerful and intrusive, but it is not absolute. And what they are doing, by doing the way they're doing this, 60 subpoenas, it looks exactly like what it is. It is a blunderbuss. It is designed to create a fog and accusations. And if they are not careful, they are going to injure the power of Congress to investigate. And I hope they do.
Mm-hmm. Well, that fog is only been expanded this weekend as Democrats get ready for a Mueller report, which is probably not going to show anything meaningful for their argument that collusion existed in any way. You still have people like Adam Schiff and Mark Warner holding on to the theory that there's plenty of evidence of collusion. Here's Mark Warner yesterday.
I think there is enormous amounts of evidence. What you do with that evidence, where it leads, I'm reserving my judgment.
They're keeping the dream alive, Joe.
Well, Mark Warner is not only a very disappointing United States Senator from Virginia, but he's really buffoonish. He has consistently said some of the dumbest things. Remember the joke he made about classified information at one of his personal fundraisers and about the documents that they were trying to get? Nobody with a brain makes a joke about this subject matter when the power of the presidency is involved and allegations of collusion of which there's no evidence. What they're doing is, and this is, just remember, Burr, the chairman of the House Senate Intelligence Committee, Richard Burr, has already announced that there is no direct evidence of collusion. And Mark Warner, his co-chair of that committee, is now saying Richard Burr is not correct. Now, at a certain point, you got to stop looking stupid. And Mark Warner has looked stupid from the very beginning of this investigation. He's trying to be cute, but he doesn't look cute. He looks stupid.
What did you think of the testimony by Michael Cohen last week? We haven't had a chance to talk to you about that and what it revealed.
Well, it was a nothing burger. I mean, he basically said he didn't have any evidence of collusion, the president didn't instruct him to lie, et cetera, et cetera. This is a pathetic creature. A guy who's convicted of lying to Congress is then the first witness that the Democrats call to come in and lie to Congress again. You couldn't make this up. He was a sad-looking figure, pathetic, completely unbelievable. Obviously, a guy who, when he was claiming he was trying to rehabilitate himself, he looked like he was lying through his teeth. But if you're a Democrat and you hate the president, you think he was great. I happen to love the president, support the president. But that aside, I think Mr. Cohen was a very bad witness, and the proof is in the pudding. He's not a cooperating witness for either Mueller or the Southern District of New York. He has no cooperation agreement with either one of those offices, and that means they do not want to sponsor him as a witness in any trial.
All right, Joe, we've got a lot more coming up with you, a lot of ground to cover. More coming up with Joe DiGenova. We're joined by Joe DiGenova, legal analyst, former U.S. Attorney to the District of Columbia. Joe, Nancy Pelosi has vowed to do everything, take all the necessary steps to get Trump's tax returns. Is this any different than, all of these subpoenas and everything? Because don't we have the right to keep our tax returns private, just between us and the IRS? And when the IRS have flagged something, if he had done something wrong?
The Finance Committee had the authority under a statute to request and get access to any U.S. taxpayers' returns under certain circumstances. She says that they are working with the Internal Revenue Service to get the president's tax returns. I must say, if I were the Attorney General, and I have no personal knowledge of this, I would be involved in this process right now, along with White House counsel, talking to the IRS and saying, you're not going to turn those over. This is not a legitimate inquiry into his taxes. This is an abuse of power by the House. We shall see whether or not they get them and whether or not they get them all or get them in an expurgated form. We just don't know. The IRS has become a law unto itself, as we learned from the way they tried to abuse conservative organizations prior to the 2016 election. So we shall see.
I want to ask you a little bit about the case that Nicholas Sandman, the student at Covington Catholic, is bringing against a vast array of media figures and organizations to include the Washington Post, which he has sued for $250 million. They have responded now by updating their original coverage with an editor's note at the top of that piece describing their evolving journalism over the course of the days following the events at the Lincoln Memorial. Will that editor's note in any way help bring relief to the Washington Post in this case?
No, I think it was a big mistake. First of all, if you're going to talk about this, you either confess or you just shut up. They blew this from the very beginning. They said, and I quote, that the story was actually, quote, more complicated than first seen, end quote. Well, that means that you didn't do it right the first time. That means you're admitting that you didn't cover it correctly. This is a stupid legal move. I don't know who is advising them. You either do a full-fledged mea culpa or you shut up. What they have done is they have given the lawyer unbelievable ammunition. If you read that editor's note, it is a smarmy, cringing, non-denial denial. It is outrageous. It is awful. How dumb. It's like Bezos taking a picture of his privates and saying it's not his privates. I mean, it's unbelievable.
Yeah, in other words, the task of journalism is to land the plane, tell us what the story actually is, and instead they ran while it was in its rumor form, now admitted by the actual note.
The entire editor's note is evidence of the worst type of journalism. They confess to having not doing it correctly. Why would you do that and not apologize to the kid? It's disgusting what they did. I hope they get slammed. You know what? This New York Times versus Sullivan, which is the one that protects the press,
yes,
under a bizarre, idiotic ruling, making common law issues into a constitutional question. I never believed that New York Times versus Sullivan should be the law. This is the kind of case that may get it broken down. I mean, there are a lot of people who believe that New York Times versus Sullivan should be modified so that people can sue in instances where they are legitimately harmed by bad press.
Joe, real quick here, the number, $250 million, is that a realistic thing at the end of this? Does he get $250 million, or are we looking at a much smaller settlement?
Let's look at how old he is. He has the rest of his life to live. He will be forever in Wikipedia. This will be the first thing in his nameplate when you go look him up on Google. The boy who offended Nathan Phillips, the fake Indian. Talk about a cigar store Indian. This guy is a cigar store Indian. I mean, this is unbelievable what they've done to this kid. $250 million isn't enough.
Now, and this is just the first one. Are we going to see all of these roll out? I mean, they put out a list of almost 50 people, and this is going to take forever. This could take years and years and years.
Well, they're going to have to sue these people within the statute of limitations. And, of course, they're all going to be sued in Kentucky because that's where he lives and that's where he was harmed, in his community. So they're going to have to deal not with courts in Los Angeles or the Ninth Circuit or Washington, D.C. or Boston or New York. Lexington, Kentucky, that's where they're going to be sued. And they should be, every single one of them, especially the stars in Hollywood, the mouths that couldn't shoot straight. Every one of them should be sued. This guy, by the way, who's the plaintiff's lawyer, is fabulous at what he does. His statement yesterday after the Post did this smarmy editor's note. Can you imagine calling something, instead of a correction or a clarification, it's an editor's note? That means they're complicit in this stupidity.
Joe, real quick, you've been a longtime member of the Gridiron Club. You had the Gridiron Dinner this weekend. How did that go? I understand you performed?
Yes, I sang a couple of songs. I was there with my wife, Victoria Tunsing, and our three guests. Victoria took care of John Solomon and Cheryl Atkinson and Sidney Powell were our guests. And Amy Klobuchar spoke, and of course the abusive boss got her chance to be funny in front of people. She was actually quite good. She's not demanding, by the way, as she describes herself. She's abusive. If a man had asked a female staffer, to clean his comb after he ate salad with it, he would be removed from office.
Yeah.
Wow.
We have a different standard here.
We didn't have the president, unfortunately. He took a night off, and we got Ivanka, and she did a great job delivering a short speech to everyone there, and she did a fabulous job.
By the way, Joe, that means that Joe is part of the more than 700 journalists, politicians, and member of the Washington elite.
Yeah, God help us.
So we've got a member of the Washington elite as a regular here.
Yeah.
Thank
All
you.
right, guys.
Thank you,
Thanks
Joe.
a lot.